Welcome back to Capitol Square. Attorney General Mike DeWine and other lawmakers have been trying this year to shut down those internet cafes once and for all.
Yeah, but now the owners of these sweepstakes parlors are calling for tougher regulations, not a complete ban, and they want Ohio voters to make the decision.
Boxes of petitions containing over 420,000 signatures were delivered to the Secretary of State's office. The filing comes at the last minute, just a day before a law would have gone into effect banning internet cafes across the state.
The ones that are legitimate should stay open. We employ jobs, we help out the communities, we pay taxes.
Rob Dabish owns over 20 internet cafes. He admits that some of the sweepstakes businesses have operated illegally. That's what led Attorney General Mike DeWine to support a ban that Governor John Kasich signed earlier this year. But Dabish says regulation is needed, not a ban.
If you're not running a legitimate sweepstakes, I'm for regulation. Shut them down.
If enough signatures are validated, the internet cafe issue will be on the November 2014 ballot. Supporters are rolling the dice. Lawmakers could still ban them by passing an emergency clause. That's exactly what Attorney General DeWine told us earlier he'd like to see happen.
There's almost 800 of them around the state of Ohio. There is no background check on the people who work there. It's a consumer ripoff because there's no guarantee of what the payout is.
But Dabish says most of the internet cafes are not illegal gambling operations. He says customers are receiving a product, and he points to a poll showing 80% of Ohioans support them.
They're not about sex trafficking, they're not about drugs, they're not about anything, just a good, safe environment.
Okay, so to help us discuss the future of internet cafes and some other issues, we welcome our great friend Jim Siegel from the Columbus Dispatch. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Okay, so where do we start with this? I mean, we've had a lot of chatter here on the desk about it, but how likelihood is that there's going to be a statewide ban on these cafes?
Well, they're going to try to get this to the ballot, and it's certainly possible they will end up with enough signatures to get a referendum on the ballot in 14. The problem that they have now, there's two things. One, they'd have to get the voters to agree with them. That's probably a bit of an uphill climb. The other thing is there's separate legislation now in the legislature that's passed the Senate already and is pending in the House that would essentially ban these internet cafes from a different angle than the bill that they're trying to overturn. The bill they're trying to overturn basically limited how much payout these machines could give. The bill that's moving through the legislature now would basically set a cap on how much of your overall revenue can be given out as in sweepstakes games, and the cap is like 5%, and which would be way lower than these establishments currently have, and would essentially put them out of business that way. So
Mike DeWine and law enforcement, I mean, they have been adamant this year. They have made these internet cafes target number one, and that legislation you point out, by all accounts, is likely if they can get a supermajority, which seemingly, if you count heads, they are close to. Above and beyond that, you have the casinos hovering, that if this does move to a ballot status, the casinos are not going to be allies in that fight.
Casinos will spend millions of dollars to crush this referendum effort. And I talked recently with Representative Matt Huffman, he's the man who sponsored the last internet cafe bill, and he's not sponsoring the current one because that started in the Senate. But I talked to him about that Senate bill, and he seems open to the idea that you could see some action on it this fall. And it does have an emergency clause, which means it goes into effect right away, and there's no chance to referendum it. So it sort of almost makes the current referendum moot if that second bill passes.
Let's talk Medicaid expansion. What are we hearing about this vote? And is there a way in the end for the governor to kind of run the legislature here? Jan Brewer carried a big stick in Arizona. Maybe Governor Kasich's plan, and maybe it's been the plan all along, to try to find a way through the controlling board or someplace else to, at the end of the year, get this done his own way.
He could. I mean, he can do an executive order. I think John Allison mentioned this kind of a little bit before, that he can do an executive order that actually authorizes the expansion. However, he can't pay for it without some type of legislative approval. The controlling board would be a likely place to go. Controlling board is 7 members. 6 of them are lawmakers. 1 of them a governor appointee, but 4 of them are Republicans. And essentially, he would need at least one Republican to come along with him.
But that one could be a whole lot easier than looking into that House and
Right.
trying to get a whole bunch.
True, but that one would also have to be have the approval of either the Senate President or the House Speaker. Neither one of them. The controlling board is a set board, but they are very interchangeable. They get swapped in and out all the time on that board. The Speaker and the Senate President could put whoever they wanted to on that board for that day, and decide whether or not they're going along with it. And it's a much more complex issue than even that. There's a worry too that it could become a game of chicken. You expand Medicaid, they don't do the authority. Now Medicaid may run out of money because they don't have, and so now it becomes a game of chicken with the legislature. And so and politically, does the governor want to really aggravate key conservatives in both chambers?
Which he already has, though.
Well, he has, but this would take it even a much bigger step further. And if he does that, does that help him heading forward to 2014 election? So it's
And along that line,
tough
what are you
situation.
hearing from lawmakers in terms of whether this really is political poison to say, if to vote for Medicaid expansion? Are people really afraid for their political lives?
They are. I mean, and I don't know that that's overall the driving factor in many of their situations. But right now, Representative Barbara Sears has been the main Republican in the legislature who has come out in favor of Medicaid expansion, and she is under attack. She's being targeted right now by the Tea Party groups and Americans for Prosperity up in her district. They're rallying to get a primary opponent, and that's really what they're worried about in this age of redistricting, where no one has to worry about a general election. Just about they're all worried about being primaried from the right. And that's a legitimate concern, and why some are talking about, well, maybe they don't act until after the February 5th filing deadline.
Well, they've left this right to the end of the year,
Right.
coming into a major election year. It's fascinating. All right, good friend Jim Siegel, as always, good to see you. Thanks.
Great to be here.
All right, when we come back, the debate from the left and the right, Sam Gresham and Bob Clegg, there they are. They join us coming up in just a minute.